Afternoon, everybody. I'm just testing the mic for myself. I thought I would just say something nice. Hi. Oh, okay. That's all right. That's the sweet spot right there. All right.
Hello and welcome back to Fiber Festival, everyone. So many of you are here, especially to welcome McKenzie Wark. I'm thrilled that you're here. I think actually the introduction of your work here in Amsterdam requires not the formal list of the wonderful books you've written and your academic affiliations at this moment, but I would actually prefer to give you a love note from me to you, which is this. I have learned so many things from you, and I realized what my role is as reader through your work, understanding the pleasure of the sub-position of readership, which is receiving the thoughts and the formulations of another person and realizing as you exist, I too can exist, and you too can exist in all of our various experiences of the world. So thank you for that, for your way you write, what you write about, which opens up for us perspectives on living and being under capitalism or something worse, living and being here with each other, with our many forms of desire, day and night. And what I especially appreciate about what you'll be sharing with us here now is, in the context of a fiber festival, here we are, it's daytime outside, it's dark in here, we're being paid to be here, right? Just positioning ourselves here, remembering that we could have also met on a misty nightclub in New York on a night, and how different these encounters are.
Maybe we did and don't remember.
It's quite possible. I've had some wonderful nights roaming around the clubs there. But I think there is a important tribute to the work you do, which is also bringing visibility and audibility to all of the things that happen in the shadows, in the dark, with such dignity and precision. So thank you for that, and thank you for being here with us today. A warm applause to McKenzie Wark.
All right, start that track up and my slideshow, and yes. Now we're cooking with gas. Track is by Body Techniques. When we met and merged, it was good, but I didn't know if you would want to come dancing with me. You said you like dancing. A lot of people do, but do you need it? Wouldn't work to have someone in the raving part of my life unless they need it too. We went to one of the smaller raves. It's a curious kind of date. You came to my place, I made dinner, we got high, fucked, got to sleep early, worked to the alarm at 3:30 to be at the rave by 4. Dancing, not together, not as a couple, but close, sensing these bodies, moving in sound, connected by sound. You're into this, lost in it. The default dance someone does at a rave, after a good hour or so, becomes so intimate. To rave, one gives oneself over to this gestural body, arrayed among others under the machine. How tender it makes me feel to be near you, lost too. Jasmine Infinity is playing. She flips me into rave space. It's all coming so easily. The flight into strange flesh, the strange flight out. Being here with you is helping me get out of myself. Dance until flesh presses needs of its own. We take a break, get water. These crypt feet hurt, so rather than return to the dance, I take you by the hand to the back of the rave. Perched on a plywood ledge, leaning together, heat and sweat. I can taste you on me, mixed with my own taste. Running a hand up your thigh, into you, feeling you flood over my fingers, gasp, enlustment. Feel like I'm offering to you, to the situation, all the states in which I'm free. Let our bodies be with each other when they're free. We're there till the end. A little cluster of favorite ravers gather and chat before we all head home, back out of the rave continuum, into the cursed sun. Back home to mine and sleep. When we wake around 11, you say that it's like we get an extra day into the weekend by getting up for a morning rave. It feels to me like you found K-time, ketamine time, the sideways time a good rave makes. A pocket in time where there's more time. You're a raver now, or always were. Next we go to the big Halloween rave, office building in Manhattan with light and fog. An empty glass-walled office space becomes something else, a playground for non-labor. It's a fetish wear party. You bought a black vinyl dress for it, hot. I'm in some black mesh thing, suspenders, stockings, boots. We're stage left. Empty aluminium cans dancing on the bass bin right in front of me. They bounce to different heights depending on how much liquid is in them. What I take to be 3 gay men in puppy masks gamble right next to us. Delightful. Less so the man in basic jeans and tee with his dick out half hard. He strokes it in a desultory way, rubs it against another body. It looks consensual, sort of, hard to tell. Update, it wasn't. I smacked him in the face at another party. I'm not paying much attention. What fills the senses is meat and heat and strangeness. Her whim emerges. 16 beats pass, then it's decided. Clambering on top of the bass bin, facing the whole room, taking in the swaying and bobbing bodies. It's a little hard to dance up there as the top of the bin is narrow and it's vibrating like mad. I wonder for a moment if anyone recognizes me, or if I'm making a fool of myself. Probably. And what's wrong with that? Lost to the xeno-euphoria of this othered body bursting free of itself as itself. Come back to check vitals. First, you help me climb down. It'd be embarrassing to break a hip. And so, morning raving became a particular ritual of ongoingness. 3:30 in the morning, wake with you wrapped around me, untangle an arm, turn off the alarm. By a bit after 4, we're at the club, banging on the steel door, no answer. Bang on the door again. The bouncer opens it, not for us, but to throw some guy out for having his camera out on the dance floor. Doors close at 4, the bouncer declares. I'm smiling, holding my ID. He shrugs and lets us in. The opening DJ got COVID, so Juliana Huxtable has been playing for 6 hours already, with more to go. She's throwing down a slew of her signature sounds. Jazz musicians improvise by pulling notes or chords out of a space of possibility into horizontal time. She pulls tracks out of a space of possibility in parallel vertical times, a kind of meta jazz. She flicks in some 80s post-punk tracks. I'm not loving these, being old enough to recall them. They're freighted with memory for me, and maybe me alone in this younger crowd. Still, I ease back on the moves and admire how Juliana threads and layers those into others, jailbreaking 80s sounds from the tyranny of taste, shattering residual structures of feeling. Then this body is moving again, back in K-time. I'm locked into some mid-range series of sounds, fading me in and out with it, dissociating out of historical time. Only something in it sparks a different kind of memory. It's kin to a refrain from a familiar track, and for once I can place it, almost. It's either Nanny Town or Maroon from the Interstellar Fugitives album by Underground Resistance. All right, who knows that one? All right, I'll give you that again. Interstellar Fugitives by Underground Resistance. Look that one up. Nanny Town was a maroon village in Jamaica, home of a resistance led by an Ashanti woman from what is now Ghana, known as Queen Nanny. That track has a vocal, a stark male-sounding voice, but one beyond any singular being. Over the thud of a 3-note bass line, they address the listener, me, in the second person. This is a voice from the past, they say, standing in the future, forever to haunt me. I should never have done this to them because now they can never rest. They are black, electric, strong, electric. That's the negative, unvoiced noise of techno, the blackness of techno itself. It's not that the future haunts the past, it's that this past haunts the future, unburied, restless, electric. My white ass is haunted by that voice from that track, surrounded by a past that is not a lost future, but a past that prevents there ever being one, that clutches at our fleeting moments of ongoingness with a cold hand. That past in which the slave was a thing, a machine. That past in which the slave as a machine was the prototype of the machine as slave. I think of those cishet men who don't want to be sonically fucked by techno. I think of it as the straight cis man's horror of being penetrable, of being fuckable, a state he associates with powerlessness. That which is technical can only be that which he masters. Techno, not as genre but as technique, lets digital machines speak, not unlike the way jazz lets analog instruments speak. Sound at the limit of what the machine can do to get free. Blackness in sound as the technique of making the thing free to sound off as itself and to take the human with it into movement, into feeling, into sensation. It feels like that's what we're doing here while Juliana plays. When I dance and when you dance, we try to play along inside the machine with no fantasy that we could ever dominate it. Try instead to make at least part of it, that a part of the human can live with. Is that a black need? I don't know. Is that a trans need? I feel that. To turn some small part of the techniques made against us or without us to our wants. We take a break from dancing to get water. I ask you how you're feeling about tonight. Apocalypse prom vibes, you say, and I laugh. Thank you.
I wish I could have you read to me instead of having the paper book. It's amazing. Which actually brings me to my first question. A term that really caught me in this book is the ongoingness. And in our little interaction before we came onto stage here, you talked about how, you write, and the book takes on a life of its own. It goes on without you, right? It has its ongoingness as it travels into people's beds and around the world. And you don't have to keep it in your brain anymore. So how is it for you now with us here to be reading this? What does it evoke for you?
I've done that piece maybe 20 times now, and I never get the timing right. It's different every time. Yeah, Owens was a little fast. There's actually like another minute of track after that. So it's funny to like have these little variations, and I sort of get to play with different parts of the track each time I do it as well. Yeah, so it's sort of improvised in a way. Ongoingness, I probably got it from, I'm not a musicologist, so if I'm completely wrong about this, I apologize for it. But the difference between Western musical notation based on division and what I understand to be Indian musical notation that's additive, where the beats are added rather than divided from the bar. And I thought, oh, so that's like ongoingness, like it doesn't presuppose the bar before there's the beats. The beats make the
beats
rhythm.
make the bar.
Yeah, but there aren't necessarily bars.
Right.
And to me that's a way of thinking differently about historical time as without a destination. Like we don't know what the destination of history is. So what can we add from the present, one moment of present after another? And I think aesthetically, one of the things that says that to me is techno, like that's sort of what it is. Like a good techno set is sort of like winds sideways rather than having beginning, middle, and end. Like stadium EDM has, beginning, middle, and end, but a good DJ set just doesn't,
It's a big now.
Yeah.
It's a big
I
now.
might steal that. Yeah, that's good. Big now. Maybe it's like little nows. Lots of little ones.
Lots of little nows.
Yeah, a swarm of nows.
Yes, a swarm of
Something like
nows.
that, yeah.
Okay. I hear a new book coming. A swarm of nows. But I'm curious because to write a book like this, in the rave state, you have to also be observant of yourself and of others. And what you write about is and speak about is also the necessity to be in a place where you don't have to overanalyze. So how did you grapple with these two, the writing McKenzie and the raving McKenzie?
Yeah, and there's, sort of language in ethnography about the inside versus the outside view, and I wanted this to sort of oscillate a little bit between the two. There's a lot of rave sociology that's along the lines of, and I went with my informant to the bathroom, and she offered me ecstasy, which I did not take. She took it, and we returned. So it's like, oh, honey, you missed the whole thing, like.
So you're part of it. Yeah.
The thing was, I decided at some point not to take notes, and on the dance floor, the whole book wrote itself in my head. And this is the first time I was ever really able to do this. I just let it go, and I would just try to remember like 2 words, and that it was possible. So the next day it's like, oh, it was possible to write this set of experiences and ideas, but I don't remember any of it. All I need to know is I can do it.
So you stopped monitoring yourself in that.
Yeah, just let it. Yeah, it's just letting it go,
To be able to then latch on to the emancipatory or the liberation of rave, is it related to this ability to let go, have a moment where you don't have to remember who you are?
Yeah, the language of to get free isn't necessarily mine. Like, this is from black and queer culture talks about this. So I hesitate to inhabit it, but learn from it. So it's like, oh, those moments really matter when you can, and it's not a thing you can do on your own, but with other people, you get free. It can be hard for trans people because we're sort of fighting our own bodies all the time. But there's for some of us, rave works on it, and I notice, oh, we're here, the girls are all at the rave. Like, why are we doing this? And it's like, oh, we get free.
Yeah. What is that relationship for you between your experience of body and the rave? What do you find there?
There's like 4 different aesthetics in the book, and I was interested in. I'm old enough to remember the 70s when everything was about alienation, and I'm like, oh, well, that language wore itself out. But what about dissociation? And can we sort of free that a little bit from the clinical use of it? And for some people, dissociation is a real problem, and it's connected to trauma. A lot of trans people dissociate, and it's not a good thing. But are there ways you can also be an ability? Are there ways that your capacity to sort of escape yourself for a situation is a thing that you can train yourself to use in certain ways? And is rave a space where you learn that? So yeah, there's 4 sort of dissociative aesthetics. Some get a mention in this chapter. There's rave space, xeno-euphoria, and lustment. 4th one's a little complicated, and that's in the last chapter. But it's like, oh, there's different ways that sort of cognition and thought and the affective envelopes of the body can, sort of free themselves and interact with the environment.
Yeah, these different aesthetics. It's what I really appreciate about this is how detailed you are in noticing the subtleties of these different states and what they bring, the aesthetics of it, and also allowing sort of a fixed academic genre of analysis, like the ethnography aspect, to blend with your lived experience, other people's stories, the quotes. It becomes this beautiful mix. And I was thinking about the writer as a mix table, right? As a DJ in a way, bringing these different tracks in. Does that work for you? The mix table.
The thing I was thinking for the first time was, Oh, one of the influences on this was T.J. Clark. Anyone know this art historian, T.J. Clark? And like he has a whole book that just reads two Poussin paintings, and he just sat in front of them for days, and it's like the detail of it, the clarity of it, and it's like, oh, that's the Apollonian. Like, can you have that attention to the Dionysian? I'm not claiming that I have, but like that was, one of the sources of it.
For those who don't know the Apollonian and the Dionysian, can you unpack
All
that
right,
for us,
so
please?
this is Nietzsche's Birth of Tragedy, and it's these two aesthetics that Nietzsche thought Greek tragedy had synthesized, and it's like dream and intoxication is one way of thinking about it. In modern times, the Apollonian was cinema. It's sort of like the dream, but yet which is at some remove from you, and it involves light. The Dionysian is necessarily participatory.
The Bacchus, the wine.
Yeah, and destructive of one's encasement in oneself. And it's sort of more about darkness than light. But the thing about Birth of Tragedy is Nietzsche says, all right, this book's going to be about synthesizing those two things, and he explains what they are. And then he says, but by the Dionysian, I don't mean the kind that barbarians do, because they do all this weird sex stuff. Not into that. I don't mean barbarian version of that.
Poor
and
Nietzsche.
I'm like, that's what I want.
Yeah.
Give me, not in those terms, but like, give me the like hardcore.
So you, in that way, you don't, miss out on the juiciness of life. That many of these people who are only thinkers really miss then. Yeah, to be there, to be there.
Yeah, I mean, Nietzsche's trapped in Western aesthetics, and the thing about being in the United States is it's like internally struggling to undo itself as that,
Because you've been there for quite a while now.
20 years.
20 years. Yes, I've been on the opposite side of the pond for equal times of time. How does living there become part of your work?
I mean, before I emigrated, I thought I better find out about America. It seems terrifying, and the people I want to trust to inform me about what America is about is I read black authors, and I always loved black music, in ways that are problematic for a white person to frankly admit. But it's like, oh, that's how fucking scary it is. It's all in that art. So that to me is sort of like the thread, and it's not a culture I can inhabit or claim. I'm looking at it from the outside and going, all right, that's core truth of America is the black experience. So what does it mean as someone who's outside of that to learn from that and honor that?
But I think sometimes being white, it is helpful to be a foreigner in white, to be able to notice these things well. The whiteness glues us sometimes so much to something that the added migration layer can help see something that you have this marginal non-belonging to in a way. Do you recognize that as a sort of semi-outsider position?
Yeah, being an Australian in America is kind of weird, because Australia's its own fucked up nightmare, but it's a different one. So you like move from, it's like, oh, there's different racisms around the world, and they're like structurally a whole other thing, So it's like, so that little difference in itself was illuminating.
Yeah, for example, in the Netherlands, the discourse on indigeneity is extremely white supremacist, whereas North American indigeneity is claiming the First Nation people. It's opposite.
The first place I ever went in the old world was Groningen in the north of Holland, and I was there for its 900th birthday.
Oh.
And it was just inconceivable to me, like something that's like white people built that's 900 years old. Like, how's that? Like I'm from a country that's only 200 years old. Yeah, it was just like
it seems to
shocking.
have been there before.
Huh?
It was there before, however. It's just as countries.
There's something else. Yeah,
it was something else. Yeah. How in your writing you have been exploring as well for yourself and others this genre of, say, autofiction. How do you position yourself in relationship to
I really like cursed genres, the ones that people like look down on.
Yeah.
Like the most cursed thing in the 80s was like postmodernism. So it's like, yeah, I'm going to do that, It's like, oh, those evil postmodernists, they're undermining every truth. And I'm like, yeah, okay, I'll be that. Then theory, like theory was this bad thing. So it's like, I'll do that. Yeah, I love that. Yeah, and then it's sort of like, and maybe it's different in other languages, but in the Anglophone world, it's like, all that narcissistic neoliberal like autofiction. I'm like, yeah, let's do that. That's really interesting. I now find the third person narcissistic. The crucial thing is that the autofiction, auto theory space for me is not confessional. It's not the inner truth of the self. It's not claiming legitimacy through trauma. It's claiming not knowing. It's about having no idea where the self came from and trying to figure out what made it. So of what are we artifacts is, I think, the central question.
Well, then we arrive curious to ourselves instead of fixated on identity, it seems.
Yeah, it's like, done right, it's like non-identity politics. It's sort of about how you never coincide with yourself. And you need a practice that involves other people to figure anything out about it.
Such as raving?
Yeah, so, I've sort of done 3 books along those lines, and it was like Reverse Cowgirl, Raving, and then Love and Money, Sex and Death. So the 3 practices were basically fucking, raving, and crying, like the third one gets really emotional, But it's like, how we produce out of those relations, the immediate relations, and then how those products of larger sort of social structures. I think that's the sort of question.
But you also write about raving in particular, but also about sex, that the ways in which it produces or reproduces nothing but itself, and which is in itself so vulnerable and powerful in capitalist times, or something worse that we're part of, to produce nothing else than this.
Yeah, it comes close to art for art's sake. But yeah, like maybe one good thing about a rave is like there's just hundreds of people really working their asses off, making nothing except heat and sweat. Like that's all it's getting made, Like that's it. Like I've been to these parties that just turn into saunas.
To get wasted, we're wasting.
And you all heard of rave rain? Like the sweat starts to rain back down on you. It's like, we made that. It's like, that's great, because most of our day jobs suck. We're like making the machine do more evil, So let's go do non-labor that makes useless energy, I think that's kind of great.
It's expenditure.
Yeah, there's a little Georges Bataille at work in this.
There's a little
those are like the
nail,
footnotes.
Thomas Nail as well, sort of this dancing on the end of the world. Well, your work seems to pose this question: what is an art of life, or what feels like the end of the world? How is this related to rave cultures?
Yeah, and it's that turn in Foucault's work. I've got to admit, I don't know the later work that well, but from like these are the disciplinary structures manufacturing bodies to like what's care of the self, So yeah, like what are sort of practices one can build up from relatively small scales that we think are inhabitable in the present? Like that seems a not entirely useless project. I don't want to instrumentalize rave or a sex party or whatever too much, It can also just be its own thing. Yeah. But also it's maybe not a bad thing to find, how are people supposed to be with each other? And a good dance floor, you learn a lot about boundaries. You learn what to do with antagonism. Like when I go to the party, I fucking hate everybody for the first 30 minutes. Like, I want to fucking kill these motherfuckers. Like this person is smoking and that one just bumped me with her elbow.
And they side looked at you the wrong way.
Fuck you all, But after half an hour, you're like, I love you, we're in this together. But the antagonism's important and you have to acknowledge it and work through it, yeah? So it's a place to put that.
Yeah. I'm going to see if our lovely audience has any question before we turn to Alma for a response. Are there any burning questions from here? Go ahead and speak and I will repeat it for you. Hi. Jamil? Yes. You know what? I am going to give you this. I will say it repeating. Can you come a little bit closer? If you just come right here. Thank you. I will say it repeating. Here you go.
Thanks. That's helpful. So my question to you, it's a bit of a long question. I'll try to keep it somewhat short. But the way that you get to politics in your work is through these kind of particular aesthetic experiences, and you don't come from this like a priori definition of what is the political world and how is that instantiated in the club, but more, you know, coming to these questions of subjectivity and temporality and resistance from these particulars. But now also in the times that we're living, we're seeing a lot of clubs gesture towards the Palestinian solidarity movement in a way that is a bit more kind of like classical performative or symbolic forms of politics. So I wanted to ask you, how might club culture kind of return to these more resistive forms of politics that aren't so directive in terms of like this is the ideology of the club, but how do we then re-embrace a form of politics that emerges from these particular gestures, experiences, subjectivities, and temporalities?
First of all, free Palestine.
Yes.
I don't know if we can stop the war, to be honest. I really don't know if we can do it, but you still try. I mean, that's an important lesson from, you know, my movement teachers is that, you know, like you don't get into this thinking you're going to win. You have to fucking try to stop a war. Like we tried to stop the invasion of Iraq and we failed, but we fucking tried, you know.
It's a million strong, but still failed.
Yeah, right. There's that. There's ways that the political sort of, it does sort of descend from outside as an abstraction a little bit. And there's a tendency to want particular cultural forms or social movements to respond to a political demand from without. And in my political history, it was fucking Trotskyists were always doing that, you know? They would show up and it's, oh, we've got some people and we can like recruit them into this other thing that we are calling the political without paying attention to what they thought politics could be or mattered, you know? They show up in gay stuff and try to make it about something else. And it's like, no, like the gay stuff kind of matters, you know? So can we sort of think what power is from the experience of different people who encounter it, where they encounter it, and how people start to conceptualize it? Like that would be the first part. The second thing is like the party's not really political at all, but you know, it's not a bad set of sort of somatic skills to acquire to know how to be in a body of people that's moving. And I've learned a lot about how to size up people in tactile encounters through dancing.
To be together.
Yeah, but it's like, you know, you're trying to, you know, do a picket line or something. Like you learn something about how bodies move together. So there are sort of transferable things between. So I don't want to say the party only matters because it trains people how to be in a picket line. But it just so happens that it's then useful in this situation, yeah. Yeah, and you know, sometimes it matters to be able to, you know, perform a somewhat ritualized and symbolic politics of like we say no to this, like this is not in our name. Whether we win with that or not, you know, like secondary to we're going to try, you know, because that matters.
And there is a degree of if I can't dance, then I want to be part of it. There's the importance of coming
which
together.
apparently Emma Goldman didn't quite say, but that's another story. She should have, you know.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I, you know, like, I was never terribly interested in the sort of ascetic version of politics that was sort of pleasure denying. Yeah, if it's not fun, I don't want to do it.
All right. We're going to continue our conversation in a moment, but first I have our next speaker who's going to respond to you. And then we'll talk all together on the couch here. DJ YoungWoman, Amsterdam-based Egyptian DJ. Woohoo! Let's give it up for DJ YoungWoman. Producer and co-founder of the Los Angeles Collective.
Yes.
Interested in the degradability of her origins and ephemerality of her future, and being at the intersection of several marginalized communities where archiving is overlooked. her artistic expression and practice became more urgent to document, celebrate, and protect her experience as those who might share a similar one going through transition. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. So, first thing first. Yes. Okay. Yes. Hi. Let's keep it going. Yes. Okay. So, my name is Alma. Some of you might know me as YoungWoman. And it doesn't work. No. Okay. And there are two things that I would like you to know about me. So first, I read Raving a couple of weeks ago. And second thing is I'm the co-founder of the Los Angeles Collective with these two gorgeous girlies, Maria and Val, who are here. Make a little shout out. And I'm going to be trying to connect both worlds, the angles and the raving, and see where we can go. So in her book, I liked Mackenzie's description of a group of dancers that she calls the Punisher, like this man here. And she uses it to describe people who are loud, they take up too much space, hits you with the elbow, just end up being like a pain in the ass for everybody on the dance floor. But also you can imagine that these punishers somehow exist in the real life. And we sort of often feel punished. Often we're not taken too seriously. We're a little bit pushed to the side and like brought back during Pride as sort of like a Christmas decoration, and then just tokenized in not a cute way. And that's where we come in, the Los Angeles Collective. So we are what we call T for T, trans for trans, tranny for tranny, transvestite for transformer, whatever you want to call it. And we wanted to give a space wholeheartedly and unapologetically for trans talent of all sorts, DJs, dancers, artists, performers. And we also wanted to provide a space for this talent to flourish. And surprise, we have been doing it. So for the past year, we've organized over 9 events. We have invited over, I think, 70 artists from the Netherlands and from all over the world, over 3 cities here. We threw our first exhibition, and we also organized workshops for DJing and self-defense. So it's going nice. It's cute. And if I'm to reflect on what have we been doing, I would start with the feedback that we have been getting. So in the beginning, most of the feedback was from trans people, which was reassuring because they are our target audience. But these days, we've been getting more and more feedback from like cis people, straight, gay, pronouns, no pronouns. They all come and tell us that they have really good time and they appreciate, oh, they're here. Sorry, it's just some angle. And they really, that they love our events. And I feel that particularly in our last event, last Saturday, that we kind of transcended something other than being just a party. And I feel like when you elevate a slice of society and you give that slice space to use the space or even abuse it, this catches on everybody, and everybody sort of have a good time and feel a little bit free and a little bit liberated. So in Raving, McKenzie talks about how a good crowd makes a good DJ, not the other way around, and I agree on that. But I think maybe we should start bringing in the people or talking to people more about the like bigger equation and start telling them about the systems that choose which DJ to play to which crowd and which crowd that gets forced into which DJ. And I feel that if the crowd is aware of all the mechanisms that can put a dance floor together, all the injustices and all like the behind the scenes behind the dance floors, I think a club could be a little seed for liberation, even on not tiny scales. And one last thing, I always get asked a lot, why are the Angles Party are busy and why are the Angles Party are so good? And before that, I didn't know, and I used to tell them just, I don't know. I think it's just good vibes. But I think I do know now. I think when you shine some light on people, it reflects on other people. And everybody feels that. And everybody gets a little bit addicted to it. That feeling of, like you were saying earlier, freedom or liberation to do whatever. And I hope that other people are taking note. So, that's done. It's just, yeah, I want to end up with this quote because it's my favorite, I think, of the book. Yes, I'm sorry I've been a bit distant, she says. I just don't want to talk about trans shit. I'll never disown who I am or who we are, but I don't want to be defined by it. Me neither, I reply through the noise. I've reached the point where it's part of my life, but not the whole of it. Like sometimes I just need to be a place where it's not too much of a thing. She smiles and says, more dancing. Thank you.
That was my actual trans mom who said that. That part's, some things in the book are a little made up, but that really happened.
Well, I think I love what you say when you when we allow ourselves and each other to shine. It shines on everybody.
Yeah.
It's so
Yeah.
beautiful. So beautiful. So I'm just curious how if you would like to respond to what you hear first.
Yeah, I was like looking at all the lineups of your parties, and I'm like, do I know any of these DJs? And it's like I actually don't. So it's now I want to, you know, like.
Come to the
How
next
long are
one
you
in
staying
July.
for?
I'm leaving tonight. Car's picking me up outside. Sorry. Next time. Yeah. Yeah, there's more than one Punisher, and the Punishers are also running the thing. It's like
Definitely,
the other side of it. And in the book, I didn't really get behind the scenes too much. Partly because of discretion, but I think there's certainly a lot to be said about the mechanics of running parties. Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that.
So this diagram you made, sort of zooming out, who picks the DJs? How does this audience find the gigs? What would you like us to know about that?
Can you?
What would you like us to know? What, let's say, you seem to be suggesting that if audiences are more informed or more aware of what's going on,
Yeah.
we'll have a different party and a different time and a better music scene as well in this.
Yeah, I think Amsterdam is kind of blessed and cursed at the same time of being a party city. And when you're just in a party city, you're looking for the next one. You're looking for the next high. You're looking for the next club for the next day. And it's very easy to just be there for the moment and just have fun. But then it's also very easy to not notice on who actually gets to show up on all these stages on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and who doesn't, and who DJs you see only at a Pride event, and what DJs you only see every other day. So I think it's always important to start a conversation about, yeah, who gets to play, who doesn't get to play, why is the crowd here much more fun than the other crowd in the other party, to start these sort of conversations for people to, I think people will get it right away. They just need that little spark moment.
Yeah. The way we think about these moments coming together is also in a way. It makes me think of another character in your book that I recognize from the queer clubs, which is the caretaker. We become each other's moms, right? You're like, have you had enough water? That's a figure. Like, are you okay? That's another thing we train. Also, sometimes for like complete strangers, that you notice someone's toppling over or something rips, or you catch a vibe that's it's not nice, and you watch out for each other in a way. How do you think raving also helps us to practice this kind of solidarity with strangers?
Yeah, and it can be a matter of weak ties. There's people I've seen at parties for years whose names I don't know, and somehow I don't care. But I know about being proximate with their bodies, and they know me, and we don't move away from each other on the dance floor. They're like, oh, okay, this is a nice pocket. I'm familiar with y'all, you know. And then maybe after you've done that for 5 years, you'll start up a conversation over a cigarette, you know. And you're like, hi, I'm McKenzie. I see you around. And it's like, yeah, I see you around. Oh, and then you know, like, but it's sort of incidental. Like the main thing is the sort of the physicality. It's like, oh yeah, I just know these people from how their bodies sort of are in relation to each other, you know. Because like the dancing has this really intense intimacy sometimes, and it can be too much, you know. Like it's not necessarily sexual, but it's also not, and that can be abused, and that's a Punisher move. So yeah, there's just people you have that with, you know, and it's sort of, but then you like, oh, that person took Molly, and so they're sweating buckets, so I'll bring an extra bottle of water next time I come to the front of the party, you know, or I'll share mine, you know. I always hesitate. I'm like, oh no, germs, but I'm like, that ship has sailed, you know. Here, have some of my water.
The intimacy of water bottles. Yeah. Yes. And for you, how do you see in the parties you've been organizing, this place for people to meet, to practice solidarity with each other, to take care of each other?
Yeah, it's definitely something that I noticed even before starting to play or starting to organize. Like random people just taking care of each other, or if somebody falls or if somebody's having a moment facing the corner or something, then somebody else would reach out for them. And
Honey, are you okay?
Exactly,
Yeah.
Honey, are you okay? And yeah, I think, yeah, it definitely depends on like a little bit maybe of like what is your intention and going to party. You can decide to be a punisher and you can decide to ruin everybody's night, but you can also decide to have fun, have the most out of your night, but also take care of if you see somebody is struggling. And I think
We've probably all been a little bit Punisher at least once. You know, it's worth owning that, you know.
I'm also
as
a
well.
very angry mom, so I'm a caretaker, but I'm like, get your shit together. So, so yeah.
And then coming back to Jamil's question before, the ways in which the space of a party, well, you say you don't want to. It's not only instrumental in practicing a picket line, but it is also a place where we find each other on the streets and then again in the nightclub to release some of the tension that's required to do the work of standing on the barricades again for Free Palestine. How do you see this connection between the party and the protest and what you're doing as well in the Netherlands in these parties?
What I notice is often, I think people look down at party people, but it's often party people who are at every single protest. Maybe not in the sharpest shape on a Sunday afternoon, but definitely the less party goers. You see them less in protests, but the party people are actually there because they're a little bit more informed, a little bit more invested in their sort of immediate surroundings.
So the crowd moves together also to the streets.
Yeah, exactly. The club finishes, you go to Dam Square, and yeah.
I mean, there are also people who just live in nightlife, and that's okay. Like, some people are just really good at it. And, for example, we'll turn a look. I never turn looks. I just show up in sweats, you know. We'll turn a look, and they'll be, and their fabulousness gives everybody else the possibility to be something, you know, to feel like they could be something. I don't have to be that, but you could be anything because of that person. And it's like, thank you. Like, it's a gift, you know. Like, that's what makes the party, is everybody, if it's a good party, everybody came with the intention to give something, you know.
Wow. Yes. I mean, when I moved to Berlin a long time ago for a few years, and then when I moved there, I mean, there's not technically a time difference, but there's a time difference of nightlife. My whole day-night shifted a good 6 hours to keep up with Berlin time. What I always find interesting is what you'll speak about, the way time shifts when we meet in the night. The sun rises again and we're still there. What is the importance of this nightlife time zone of the shared space, shared time of the nightclub?
Yeah, I mean, every city has a different temporality, and a lot of it in New York's got to do with you can't legally sell alcohol after 4 p.m. So that version of nightlife shuts down at 4. But the raves go till morning. But that means the raves are where you meet the nightlife workers who knock off and often then want their own space. So it's afters for people who work in nightlife. Also, most sex workers are done around that time as well. Like, there's a lot of clients to be found, so they're also there. And by 4, people who drink aren't, you know, they've gone home from legal clubs, so the alcohol crowd's mostly gone.
You have a second wave.
Yeah, and so it's like, I really kind of love that after 4 vibe, because it's like, oh, this is the people who live at night, you know. And I only do part-time, like, it's not, I have a day job, you know, I can't be there all the time.
Yeah.
But I like being able to connect to that universe, because it's a different version of the city, you know, and the city's temporality, the city's labor, you know, so people like doing various kinds of labor that keeps the city going. Yeah, and I just love to see that, you know. And it's always been a time for queer people, you know, like we don't have much in daylight, but this sometimes we've got, you know.
Could you talk to us about feminism? In the back of the book, you give a little lexicon of these terms, and this for me was a new one. You call it the collective state emerging out of a constructed situation, from which masculinity that expresses itself as domination is subtracted as technically obsolete.
I got it from a meme. And the meme has the word like feminism, and I'm like, that's a really cool word. I want to do something with that. And it's, you see what's probably a woman, but it's just a human, from the back who is crossing a sickle with a magic wand. You know? We know what a magic wand is, right?
Yeah.
Okay, brand of vibrator, like the one, still. I'm old school. I'm like, oh, okay, so it's you know, want and need, necessity and pleasure, you know? I'm like, yeah, all right. So can you build that out as a concept? And is there a way you can use language to, all right, so pro-feminism, but there's parts of it I can't align myself with. So is there a way to sort of reframe some of those goals by changing the language and thinking about where else it might emerge? Yeah, so where does feminism happen, if we can sort of describe it as a kind of practice, a kind of philosophy, a kind of orientation to the world? And it's like when the dolls take over the dance floor, there it is, you know? It's like, oh, okay. It's like, and maybe it's just like a New York thing, and the dolls are like a subset of trans women. I'm not one. But if they show up and just like take over the whole front of the dance floor, and you're just like, it's like a blessing, you know? I'm like, oh, okay, thank you, you know?
Gracing us with your presence.
Yeah, like it's a blessing. Like if trans women show up to your party, you've been blessed, which is why they should get in free.
Woohoo! Can we instate that in Amsterdam from now on, like as the first step?
Yeah, make trans women free. You can be selective about that, you know.
What do you mean?
Like Dora always has to be a little selective, and you know, some of us are not always on our best behavior, so there's exceptions. But trans women free is a very important principle.
All right, all right. Any other questions from the audience? Yes, I'm going to come a little bit closer because I think repeating is not going to work so well. Could you come maybe to here? Yeah, you can come next. Yeah.
Thank you. Question to McKenzie Wark. So I've been following your work since probably a Hager Manifesto, and it's a question about the art of living. So I may reduce it to a dichotomy, but I'm trying to get to my point. So there are, given that this is not capitalism anymore, most likely something worse, most likely something that is actively trying to kill us, or at least to get us sad and desperate. I always felt in your work that there was a sense of hope, that the possibility of a revolution, or at least of a revolt. I remember in a Hager Manifesto the hint that maybe this time is different because we can create a world free of necessity. And given the current world, the current situation, there are other thinkers like Bifo Berardi that they are calling for desertion, abandon, leave the ship and don't engage. And what's your stance today? I mean, it's about to act, given that we fail, as for the Iraq war or Palestine, or it's about to retreat and not engage.
I've been on the stage twice with Franco Berardi, and both times I was like, I should just fold my tent and go home, you know, like. And then one time it was like Franco's third show of the day. I'm like, where does that energy come from? He's older than I am, you know. So if you want hope, Franco is your person, you know. I don't think it's quite what I do. I'm interested in possibility, but you know, I came out of the labor movement, and we were defeated, like just massively and horribly, all through the 20th century. So, you know, how do you recuperate from that sense of defeat? How do you regroup and find the places of possibility and the practices of possibility without sort of necessarily having a kind of teleological project where we win in the end? Because I think that can be disabling. But yeah, and particularly in that, Hacker Manifesto is 20 years old this year.
Congratulations.
Some of it's wrong, and some of it I think still actually pretty good. But yeah, like how do you, you know, use engagement with practices and play with language to give us some sense that things are possible? Is a slightly different thing to that there is hope. Hope's probably a good thing. I'm just a natural-born pessimist. It's not a thing I can, you know, offer.
But you can keep on going even without hope.
Yeah, it's Beckett, right? I can't go on, I'll go on, you know. Yeah. I mean, look, I don't know what's like in your experience, but in trans community in New York, keeping each other alive is the first thing that we're doing, you know. So it's not, you know, there aren't really grand visions. It's like, how do we keep each other alive, you know, in the present? What's the ongoingness of our friends? Because we lose them, you know. So it's very sobering to start, you know, realizing that's part of the struggle.
Would you like to respond to that at all, Elmer?
Don't lose hope.
Don't lose hope. Okay.
I think, yeah, there is something, at least from my personal experience, like talking about transness in general, it does sound like a crazy adventure, and like a sort of an impossible one at that. But if you sort of believe in yourself and believe where you can go, this is like the only drive you'll need, and you'll just, they hit you in the head and you come next time with a helmet, and that's and that's it. Yeah.
All right. Last question to you.
Thank you.
So this is to YoungWoman. I'm also a Middle Eastern artist trying to make it in Amsterdam, and I have this issue with, I'm trying to incorporate my culture into my work, but my culture doesn't accept my transness, and I try to incorporate my culture into the art that I hear, and the art that I do here doesn't accept my culture, as we all know. And so I have this space that we call it in Iran, az unja runde, az inja munde, which means not fitting here, not welcome there. So how can I process this in the creative process?
In the 29 seconds remaining.
Okay, I think there are, okay, I'm gonna quickly unfold this because I think I have a similar experience. You do fit in your own culture more than you actually think. That's sort of it's hard to believe it because you probably had a first-hand experience that proves that you don't belong, but you actually do. And for me, once I accepted that I'm an Egyptian girly, that's sort of, once you take it in, it doesn't become forced, or it's not foreign to you anymore, because when you move out or when you expose to something else, your own culture kind of looks or feels foreign to yourself, and you have to re-embrace it again. And once you do that, I think other people will just automatically sort of gravitate towards it because you yourself are not against your own culture. That's my very short answer.
To remember our belonging, even if it's rejected, it's part of that.
Puts it well, yeah.
It's hard to remember that. It took me 10 years to go back to where I'm from. I needed to wait until I was ready to face the rejection, which I got, which is to be expected. I waited. I waited until I was ready. But then, when I got it, it was somehow a relief. I was like, oh yeah, they acted exactly as I expected they would.
And it's fine. You move on.
At the helmet, grow a helmet, yes. The clock has stopped blinking. Does that mean we have more time?
I think we had a question over there.
If you get one more in, maybe.
Let's do one more. Just one more. If you come a little bit closer.
Love that top, by the way.
Thank you. I have a question. First of all, it's a big mirage to see the two of you next to each other. I've been fangirling in the back since the beginning. I have a question for you. I think reading your book, Raving, did a big thing for me last year. I'm a student of Eva Hayward, who you know.
Who I met in person for the first time this morning.
Today, yeah, having brunch together, I know. But basically, we have reached some sort of impasse in trans communities and in trans activism, especially with visibility and representation. And I think your book opened something in me, as well as Alma's podcast called Extra Dial, in which she talks about the sounds of transness and the transness of sounds. And I'm wondering whether, looking at opacity as a technique of resistance, if opacity still focuses on the visual, perhaps the visual is not the way is not the place that we should be looking for solutions or looking for avenues of liberation, of transformation. Perhaps in audibility and in sonic transness, do you think there's something to be looked for there? That's my question.
Yeah, I don't know about in Dutch, but in the English-speaking world, the trans tipping point is about 2012, 2013, this heightened visibility. And the black girls were already saying this is a bad idea, 10 years ago, visibility is a bad idea. And they were right. They were just right, It's complicated because we need to be able to find each other, but that mass visibility is hurting us. So how do you practice arts of discretion where we're visible to each other but not to anybody else? That's the visibility side of it. But one of the anchoring concepts of the book is the surround, which I got from Fred Moten. And it's sonic, can we sort of hide out in the surround where you're not visible, but you're there's an audible space that you can find your way into in the corners of the city. So yeah, to sort of rethink the profile of the senses a little bit. Because a good rave does sort of degrade the visual. I love fog, more fog the better, if you see no further
See that
than
in
this,
your
it's
pictures.
Awesome,
Yeah.
yeah. And and it's good rave isn't even necessarily about sound, it's you feel it, you feel the sub bass, that's the sense is sort of almost kinesthetic that you're sort of getting into. So yeah, absolutely, on both those points, to be wary of the privileging of the visual, and what, for example, are sort of kinesthetic and sonic sensory practices for trans people, where we can find each other, but discreetly.
Yeah, that you can signal each other without everyone knowing. Sounds like noise to others. Yeah. Right. Final words for either of you for tonight. We have drinks.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you for being here.
Yes, thank you for having us.
here.
Thank you for having
All
us.
right.